How you doing, guys, and welcome to another Dark Souls 2 video where I'll be offering my tips and strategies on all the bosses. This time I'll be taking on the 3 next bosses that I took on in the game. The first one being the Demon of Song. Now this guy is incredibly easy but at the same time very annoying. Because basically you can't just run up to this guy and start attacking whenever and wherever the hell you feel like. This guy is only vulnerable on one part of his body, and that's his face. Unfortunately though, for the majority of the fight, he'll keep his face covered up, and when he does that, he will be completely invulnerable to any attack that you can throw at him, whether that be with melee weapons or with magic or whatever kind of character build you're going for. Now, the good news is this fight should offer you no trouble whatsoever if you know what to do. Now, while he does have his sort of helmet or sheath or whatever the fuck you want to call it, you can't attack him, so it's pointless even trying. Instead, what you should do is get close to him to try and bait out him showing his face. But when he does that, don't immediately go in for the attacks. Instead, when he shows his face, try and back off a bit and bait his attacks. He'll usually do a slamming move with his arms, or he'll try and grab at you. The good news is that these moves are incredibly easy to dodge because they have a long build up, so you can usually see them coming. I would say that the biggest moves that you have to worry about is when he stands up and does this slamming down move. The reason being is because it does have a long reach, so instead of backing off, I'd recommend going to the side. And the second move is he does this sort of jumping attack. Now, this can be hard to dodge because it does sort of follow you around the arena, so you definitely want to make sure you're quick. But other than that, this guy offers no challenge at all. All you have to do is just bait his attacks. Pick your moments carefully when he's showing his face, and this guy should go down in no time. And there you have it. That's another boss taken care of. A pretty easy damn boss, but hey, they've all got to be done, right? So, now let's move on to the next one. Okay, so the next boss I took on was Velstadt, the Royal Aegis. Now, if you thought the last boss was easy, which you should have done, then this boss is really going to make up for it in difficulty. First of all, to even get to the boss, you have to go down this long corridor that is full to the brim with enemies that keep endlessly respawning. So it's pretty pointless to try and fight your way through this corridor. Instead, you should do what I did just before I entered this boss fight. Run down the corridor and sort of stick to the left or the right hand side, it doesn't really matter, and instead run around the enemies as quickly as you can. You don't want to waste too many flasks or risk getting damaged too much before you take on this guy, because this guy does hit hard and you're going to want as much health and as much flasks as you've got. Okay, so the good news is the first stage of this fight actually isn't that hard at all. He's pretty much like any standard knight or even the giant knights that you should have already faced through this game. He's got some pretty basic swiping and slamming attacks, but because his weapon is so big and heavy, you can easily dodge through these because they've got such a long wind up you can always see them coming. And you don't really have to worry about anything else. During the first stage, that's all he does, stick close to you and try and hit you with his weapon. I would suggest instead of rolling away from his weapon, instead try and roll through it. So for example, if he's swinging for the left, then you should roll through the left through his weapon. I wouldn't recommend using your shield too much in this fight. Although, if you do have a shield that does block 100% of physical attacks, you can block his attacks, but the problem is, because his attacks are so powerful, chances are it's going to leave you staggered, and if he goes for a follow-up attack, it's going to do some serious damage to you. Okay, so after you've done roughly half the damage to this guy's health, eventually he'll enter his second stage, and this is where things can get really tricky. He'll sort of enter a stage where his sword becomes engulfed in magic, and from this point on, all his attacks will not only damage you physically, but they'll also have a magic percentage added onto them as well. Now, the main difference between this stage and the last stage is every now and then he'll sort of swing his mace up in the air and drop down to his knee, and he'll shoot these magic orbs out at you. Now, these really hit hard, and they do follow you around the arena, so it can be very hard to try and dodge them. I would recommend either having a shield that blocks the majority of magic damage, or just try your best to roll through them as they're coming towards you. You don't want to take these head on because they do hit hard. The second thing that I would say is really something you have to worry about is if you're too far away from this guy, then he will sort of break out into a jog or a light sprint at you, and he will hold his weapon above his right shoulder and he will slam it down at you. Now, this is very hard to dodge because as he's slamming it down at you, whether you're rolling left or right, he'll sort of follow you around just like that. You saw as I rolled to the right, he sort of followed to the right for a split second. So basically what that means is that you have to time your dodge perfectly. And again, I wouldn't recommend using your shields. I suppose it can save you some damage, but I wouldn't rely on it. I would say the trick to this boss is to really practice on your dodging and roll through his attacks. And that's pretty much it, really. You don't really have to worry about anything else. Although, one last piece of advice for this boss, absolutely do not, under any circumstances, do what I tried to do in a few seconds. So in a few seconds time, he's going to drop down to his knee and get ready for his magic shooting move. Now, because his health is so low, I thought I'd take the risk and I thought I'd try and run up and attack him. And it very nearly took me out. So I thought I could take him down before he shot out the magic, but unfortunately, he hit me and he hits hard. Now, my health bar is very high, so that's really the only reason I survived it. And I've got decent armor. If I didn't have these things, chances are he would have took me out in that move. So yeah, when he's gearing up for that move, try and focus on dodging it rather than attacking him first. And if you follow those tips, then I'm not going to say you're not going to have no trouble because that guy is hard, but hopefully you'll have an easier time if you follow those tips. Okay, so the next boss that I took on was the Guardian Dragon. That's right, a dragon. Now, dragon fights in Dark Souls games have always been difficult, so I was expecting good things out of this. So, what we're taking this boss on? How about we flip that epic switch? Okay, so the thing about this boss is that when he's on the ground, this guy is actually a massive pushover. I mean, you can do exactly what you saw me doing. You can sort of go behind his feet and chip away, and while you're there, really the only attack he does is he'll lift his leg up every now and then and try and slam down with it. But you can easily roll out the way of that, get back in and get some damn good hits in. It's a fantastic strategy, and if this guy stayed on the ground, you could take him out in no time because that's all he does while he's down there. Unfortunately though, this guy doesn't just stay on the ground. He will constantly keep flying up into the air or to the very rear of the arena, and when he does this, you need to back off straight away because that means he's gearing up for this fire breath move. Now, as you saw in the beginning of the video, this move very nearly killed me and I got extremely lucky. The best piece of advice I can give anyone is when he does fly up in the air, run immediately to the very opposite end of the arena and just wait for him to drop back down again. As soon as he does drop back down, try and run up close to him as quickly as you can, because if you take too long to get back up close to him, he'll just jump up in the air again and you're going to have to wait patiently until he comes down. Other than that, there isn't really any other advice I can give you. I think this boss mainly comes down to patience more than anything. As I've said, and as you've already seen, while he's on the ground, you can take his health down in no time. His defense really isn't that high. Unfortunately though, if he keeps spamming where he's flying up in the air, then this fight's gonna take a while. To try and help out with a fire, I would recommend equipping armor that's got a high resistance to fire. However, if you stick to my trick where you run to the opposite side of the arena when he flies up, then you shouldn't really need this. And if you follow these tips, you should take this boss down in no time. So, there you have it guys, that's another free boss dealt with. Thank you for watching my video, and I'll see you next time.